It's a beautiful feeling. You're in the water, you're chasing down your prey and shooting it with a spear rather than casting a line and reeling it in. That feeling hasn't changed since the first ancient Chamorro caught his first fish.
In the first two parts of this series, we learned how Guam became a modern-day colony and about the fight for independence. In this part, we'll meet a young indigenous couple who is trying to liberate Guam through food.
Everything we do is centered around that respect that we have for nature.
We revolve around nature. Nature doesn't revolve around us.
This is Francesca and Hilan. They're working to make Guam's diet less dependent on imported food.
This is my mom and dad's garden where I grew up. I grew up here in this house. This fern is actually called Mangilao. It's used in Chamorro medicine as a tea. So you just pick the leaf and you boil it in water, and then you can use the steam to clear your sinuses. It works better than eucalyptus. There's really alarmingly high rates of cancer in our community, along with other lifestyle diseases, which happen because of colonialism and because of the environmental injustices that have been brought upon our island. Preserving our land, preserving our way of life is to protect ourselves, protect our bodies, protect our children and our communities, because we're dying.
On Guam, the rate of diabetes is twice as high as the rest of the U.S. In 2014, half of the deaths on the island were due to heart disease and cancer.
Obesity and diabetes and all of these diseases and all these ailments which didn't really exist before, suddenly they're overtaking the culture.
This was a community that relied on farming and fishing. We didn't have grocery stores on Guam. Foods came from your farm and fishing and hunting.
This continued through Spanish colonization, and even when the U.S. Navy first took control of the island and began stripping Chamorros of their land. But during World War II, when the Japanese occupied the island, there wasn't enough food to go around. And when the Americans came back at the end of the war, they took almost 2/3 of the land on Guam.
With the control of Guam, American forces have now acquired an invaluable base.
The Second World War was like a huge shock to the island culturally. Suddenly, thousands of people don't have land anymore. People who farmed their entire lives and provided for themselves suddenly have to work wage jobs.
So when the military took that land from them, they completely took away their entire means of subsistence.
By 1944, the Chamorro farming way of life had pretty much disappeared and people were starving. They needed an alternative solution.
How do you feed an entire island's population instantly? Well, it was through canned food, Spam. So Spam becomes part of the diet, and there are Chamorros who view Spam very emotionally. Like when they see a can of Spam, they'll get choked up, and it reminds them of the Marines and of freedom. Unfortunately, it coincides with them now losing their ranches, so now becoming reliant on this diet of processed foods.
Poor diet isn't the only health problem on Guam. High rates of cancer are also attributed to contamination by the herbicide Agent Orange, which was used as a weapon during the Vietnam War, and according to testimonies was also used at the time to kill plant overgrowth on Guam. Guam is also downwind of the Marshall Islands, where the U.S. military tested nuclear bombs for 12 years.
You're in the water with the fish. You only catch one fish at a time, but you get to choose exactly which fish it is. So you know that you're not getting a fish that's not mature. If you get the ones that are too small, then they don't have a chance to reproduce fish for the next fisherman or for you for next time.
When you are reliant on your resources, when you
fish every day,
yeah, when you eat and live off of the land, then you're more conscious of the impact that you have on the land and the ocean. And that's something that is already instilled, it's inherent in Chamorro culture.
There's only, so many islands that we can say that we come from, and you can't find the Chamorro people or culture anywhere else in the world. Behind me right here is the fence, like the back fence to the U.S. Navy base here in Guam. The families that used to occupy this land before the war were forced out of it after the war so that the US can build a Navy base. So this fish is a parrotfish. This is called palaxi in Chamorro. Palaxi means slippery. It's the best fish in the ocean.
The original Chamorro diet was made up of lots of fish, bananas, breadfruit, even fruit bats. But over the years, the influence of other cultures introduced foods like lumpia from the Philippines, red rice made with achote seed brought in by the Spanish, and of course, Spam. What is this here?
This is a fried parrotfish.
Yeah.
This is breadfruit cooked in coconut milk.
I didn't like fish, didn't like coconut milk. Because I didn't grow up with it, I didn't like it.
Yeah. What was in your household growing up?
Canned food, Ichiban, ramen, instant ramen noodles.
That's why there was heart disease in our family. And we're so proud of the fact that we're like number 2, second to Hawaii in the consumption of spam.
Yeah.
We have spam cook-offs.
Teriyaki spam, garlic spam, spicy spam, jalapeno spam, spam with cheese.
In the stores during Christmas, they do spam Christmas tree installations.
And food you buy from the store is not cheap.
It's like $9 for a gallon of milk.
$7, $8 for butter.
And why is food so expensive?
The Jones Act. Importing.
The Jones Act says that only U.S. ships can transport goods between U.S. ports, making shipping really expensive to places like Puerto Rico, Hawaii, and Guam. And because 90% of the food here is imported, that additional cost is a real burden for the people who live on the island. Why do you guys find it so important to build a movement around sustainable food?
We've been so indoctrinated to believe that our resources come from somewhere else, but they're here. They've always been here. Our food independence is our political independence. It is the one thing most people are afraid of losing.
It was incredibly inspiring to meet so many young Chamorros who are reclaiming their food traditions and culture. With a history of colonization, occupation, and militarization, Chamorro people on Guam have been stripped of so much of their land, traditions, and autonomy. But they continue to survive, and some are determined to take back their island altogether. Hey guys, I want to introduce you to our incredibly talented animator, Marissa.
Half a day. I'm Chamorro, so working on this series meant a lot to me. Please share with your friends and don't forget to subscribe to Untold America.